Pleasant good afternoon to members of the media and to our viewing and listening public online. Welcome to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service press briefing for today, Tuesday. I am Michelle Lewis, Inspector of Police, Public Information Officer. I am joined today by the Commissioner of Police, Acting MacDonald Jacob, as well as the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Acting Intelligence and Investigation, Mr. Wendell Williams. This press briefing is called to give an update on the crime situation, as well as other matters under investigation. I now hand you over to Commissioner Jacob.
Good afternoon to all the viewing public and the listenership here this afternoon. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the executive of the police service is very much concerned of the rise and the upsurge that we are having in violent crime in our country. Within recent times, we had several murders, shooting and woundings as a result of gang rivalry. We responded in a positive way within the last 2 weeks by holding down a lot of these high crime areas where the shooting and woundings were taking place. In fact, I know persons will be concerned with the numbers. At this time, we have 364 murders reported for the year so far. We recognized a new trend that in order to carry out the high level of reprisal from one gang to the other, they started to target each other in what we call neutral spaces throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Some of the neutral places are in fact high public places as it relates to areas of nightclubs and even in some instances at sporting venues. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service main units, including the Interagency Task Force, the Guard and Emergency Branch, our General Task Forces, have increased their operations in relation to these high crime areas or zones of special concern in an effort to remedy the situation. Other than holding down these zones with the support of the Defense Force, we decided that it is necessary to bring out 60 police officers from our vacation leave, especially to assist in the open spaces and the public spaces I spoke about, which will enhance our new approach to doing patrols, both foot and mobile, by creating the patrol grids and increasing our presence in the various spaces. As the situation escalated within the last few days, we have now restricted leave for all police officers And we have doubled up the manner in which officers are working in 5 police divisions. These divisions are the Western Division, Port of Spain Division, our Northeastern Division, Central Division, and Southern Division. Meaning to say, and I had given an example earlier this week, in most places we have officers who will work 8 to 6, 6 to 8, that is 2 days, basically, and off for 2 days. They are now required to work 24/48. The task forces that worked 24/48 are now required to work 24/24. All of this is designed to get additional boots on the ground. It is also designed to get additional patrols out there. It is also designed to ensure that we can form the necessary cordons in most of the high crime areas. We are asking the public to bear with us because it's not just presence, but active presence out there, where the officers will be engaging in a lot of stop and searches, roadblocks, and other policing activities. So we are asking you to bear with us as we deal with this challenging situation in Trinidad and Tobago. We want to give you the assurance, together with our partners, the Defense Force, who is supporting us, boots by boots, side by side, we will in fact deal with this scourge that is taking place. Our investigators are also playing a very, very important part with the work that they are doing in order that we can arrest persons and bring them before the court. Our firearm initiative, our joint firearm seizure initiative, is one of the key to redressing the problem of gun violence. In fact, 87% of our murders this year so far is as a result of gun violence. Therefore, this firearm initiative that we launched earlier this year need to be continued, need to be enhanced. For the year so far, we have, in fact, seized 408 firearms and have arrested and charged 1,030 persons for firearm-related matters. We continue this work. But what is significant, that for the entire last year, we seized 61 high-powered weapons. And at this time, we have seized 60 high-powered weapons. And we are now in the month of August. This tells us something. But I need to add that with some of the shootings that we had in relation to the high-powered weapons, out of 21 incidents, we had 55 deaths and 18 other persons being wounded. This is creating serious issues for us, the police, and the general public. Because in some instances, you will find that some innocent bystanders are getting shot and even killed because of the use of these high-powered weapons. We continue with our firearm initiative, and we'd like to thank the U.S. authorities who have now reinstalled their agent from the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm Bureau to Trinidad and Tobago, who is doing work with our intelligence agency. Together with me here this evening is Mr. Wendell Williams, who is the acting DCP, who is in charge of intelligence and investigation. And he will elucidate a bit to deal with some aspects of the approach that we are taking concerning gangs when I complete my interaction with you all. I also mentioned earlier this week that we have compelling and cogent evidence, no guessing, that a large number of firearms that are being seized on the streets in Trinidad and Tobago are in fact coming from North America. We have several examples of that, and I mentioned that it is coming through our legal ports. I think you all could remember 2 incidents at our Freeport Bun Center where several arms and ammunition were found within the last few months. Also at Swissport, we also had incidents that occurred in March 2020, where we intercepted a vehicle that just came off the port in Woodbrook. And again, several arms and firearm components parts were seized and persons were arrested and charged. We had instances in April 2021 where 26 firearms were seized and components parts for AR-15 rifles were found. We had instance in June 2021 when again firearms, Glock pistols, rifles were seized at a courier location coming from the US. We also have in February 2022 where firearms and components parts were again seized through our intelligence from another bun, which came from the US. We have other aspects of work that we are doing with the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm Bureau, where we do the tracing of firearms that are found and seized on our streets in Trinidad and Tobago. And in so doing, we have identified where the last transaction of the firearm took place. And I can call locations like Miami, Georgia, Baltimore, Texas, where the last transaction took place. We even had situations in 2019 where a Trinidad national with joint citizenship was in fact charged in Georgia for smuggling 36 firearms into Trinidad and Tobago. Again, this is also evidence, because when we do our work here at this end and seize firearms, and it is traced to be coming from North America, our partners, our international partners, do work on the other end And when they identify who were the persons responsible, they will go about charging these persons. We had other such incidents. So that is the reason why we are working with our international partners to prevent this continued insurgence of these high-powered weapons and other type of firearms in Trinidad and Tobago. With this information, we have now established a multi-border protection agency through the Ministry of National Security, involving several departments with the support of our international partners. It wouldn't be fit of me at this time to talk about that multi-agency approach because it is being organized and managed through the Ministry of National Security. So it will be the responsibility for the Ministry of National Security, when they see fit, to indicate how this multi-agency border protection agency is operating. All I can say, it is intelligence-driven, and within the past few weeks and months, we have been doing releases with a lot of good work coming out from this particular agency, where the police is in fact responsible at the end of the day for carrying out the charges of persons. So that will be enhanced as we go along to prevent the proliferation of firearms and ammunition in Trinidad and Tobago. We must deal with the gangs because we have gangs now involved in human trafficking, illegal quarrying, land grabbing, drug running, home invasions, and I will leave it, excuse me. Yes, I will leave it to my colleague here to talk more about some aspects of the gangs and what is happening with the gangs, what we are doing to deal with the gangs. But you all will know about the GRACE program, the Gang Resistance and Community Empowerment Program, that was launched about a month ago or so with the US, where they in partnership with the TTPS to deal with the hard side of dealing with gangs, the intelligence development side, and also dealing with the community empowerment, where we have selected 12 communities to do the work. I spoke about that to introduce this aspect where we must, even though we push on the hard side with all our suppression, patrol approach, eradication of the guns, and I mentioned earlier with the number of persons who have been charged so far this year for just gun-related matters. But yet we have a continuation of young persons being involved in criminal activities coming out of gangs. These programs are designed to prevent the young persons from being involved in gangs. The data tells us a story. The number of young persons between the ages of 16 and 25 who were murdered last year is 210. I need to make a correction. That was between 16 and 25 and 25 and 34. So basically between 16 years and 34 years, 210 young persons. I consider persons in the late 20s, early 30s as young, you know. And so when I talk about young persons, that is what I'm referring to, right? I know some persons here are happy that I mentioned that, right? So they fall into that category, right? And for this year, from 16 to that 34, 165 young persons have already been killed. As it relates to charges for murders, last year, we charged 55 young persons, and you know the age group that I'm dealing with, for murder. And for this year, 36 young persons already for murder. We are more than losing a generation. And I'm just giving figures in relation for a year and 8 months. So if I go back for 5 years, what will happen? Looking at the age group. Something must be done, and must be done when? Now. But the police cannot do it alone. And that is the reason why since at the beginning of the year, I have been making calls for the various non-government organizations, ministries, individuals who are willing to come forward and join with us, because the TTPS, we are professionals in what we are doing, and we identify what is some of the core problems. And we know as a fact that even though we require the hard aspect, the hard form of policing that we can do very well, and we are trained to do, we also recognize that there is need to deal with the other side. And that is why over the years, we have reached the point to establish 131 police youth groups in all the different communities doing the work with the young people to create that shield that is necessary to prevent young persons from going astray. We join with the families, we join with the parents to provide that buffer. But we realize that we need to do more. And the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, through its community police officers, continue to ask for more manpower. But also, the community generally is asking for more boots on the ground. They are asking for more police presence. So we made the plea, because with all these agencies coming on board, they can help tremendously. Thus, I am really, really happy to say that most of the ministries have responded, and responded in a positive way. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, I know very soon they'll be launching a very important parenting program. The Ministry of Sports and Community Development launched that program with Male Empowerment Program. The Ministry of Youth Development and National Service have the YAPA program. The Ministry of Education also is working with the police. And we also have vision and mission with the work that they are doing. They have a joint partnership with the police service. And I don't want to forget all the other non-government organizations who have come forward, especially the 114 persons who showed up at the Police Service Mediation Center set up at the old St. Joseph Police Station to join us in doing conflict resolution, life skills for young persons and others within the various communities. That mediation center is up and running. The University of the West Indies and other institutions came forward and joined in to support us in that regard. When we came up with these approaches, persons were in fear because they thought that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service will not be going to deal with the other side that we can do well, the hard form of policing. We need to operate on both sides. Prevention is better than cure. We need to deal with the root causes of the crime and criminal behavior in the society. And in so doing, that form of work is totally necessary. There are also some faith-based organizations that came on board, and we are asking for more, because we are seeing that there is need for more positive intervention into the lives of young persons. I must mention something here, and sometimes I'm in fear to mention it. But I'm looking at what the Ascension League with relation to sports and what our data is showing as it relates to La Hoquita. The kind of effect that had in La Hoquita. And within that community, which was a community that at sometimes we considered as a hotspot. I am seeing, even in the area of Murga St. Mary's, close to the area that I'm from, they have now organized a football league and using the facilities at St. Mary's. Recently, together with the regional corporation and the blended club in Princestown, I was fortunate to launch a T20 cricket tournament. And the question is, these things can add by getting young persons involved in positive activities within the communities, will also act as a shield and a barrier for young persons to be involved in negative activities. And my spirit is telling me to say this, that we tend to say that crime is everybody's business, and we are asking persons to come on board. But some of the persons that we asking to come on board is not to come on board necessarily to be deputized with a firearm to help the police, but to be deputized in the way that I'm saying, and carry out their responsibilities as parents, as fathers. Because in some instances, when we do the analysis, there are so much of warrants the police will have in their possession for persons who choose not to pay maintenance to see about their children. To the point that warrants need to be taken out. What you are doing is creating an avenue for the gang leaders to play a part in your child's life when they cannot get the basic needs in their home, so that even persons who are interested in helping the situation can live up to the responsibility and pay their maintenance, mind your train, see about your home, because it leaves room for gang leaders who are involved in illicit activities and get easy money to get your son, to get your daughter into gangs. So I'm calling on a lot of the institutions that we are aware that a lot of their employees are some of the people who are not, in fact, paying their maintenance, to give them encouragement. Because at the end of the day, we don't want these persons to be considered as part of the problem. We can all contribute to crime in different ways. From the words that comes out of our mouths, our behavior as persons who are in authority are not living up to our responsibilities. We continue in a relentless way to deal with the crime situation. We understand by listening to the comments and the feel of members of the population. But we, the police, we are here for you. And we want to give you the assurance that we will do all that is necessary to turn around the situation that is existing in Trinidad and Tobago. We have certain tools that was taken away from us, basically, when it comes to the whole aspect of bail that came to an end on the 4th of August. We know now that persons can get bail for murder. And I ask the question constantly, what kind of effect we believe this can have on the minds of the criminal elements out there? Is that an encouragement or is it a deterrent? We are seeing what is happening. But in spite of that, we will use all the tools and avenues before us to address the problem. Fortunately for Jamaica, you will see that the Prime Minister spoke. Earlier in the year, the Minister of National Security spoke. And they are actually going to change their laws to deal with the whole aspect of gangs. They know about hard policing. But earlier this year, they had engaged us to find out of some of our activities as it relates to our Hearts and Mind program and others, because they also recognize that hard policing alone will not cut it. But you have to continue moving hard. And you also need the necessary tools for the police officers to do their job. A reporter spoke with me earlier this week, and I explained to the reporter about the psychology of gun possession. When an individual who is 14 years is given an AK-47 or AR-15 in his or her hands, how that will empower that individual. And the question tends to be asked, how these persons are so brazen. And you know, I used to counter some newspaper article I saw that Jacob say that the crimes that are occurring in the murders are not brazen. I don't know why. I never said that. I explained why. Because when persons are so empowered, they will in fact develop that bravery to go out there and commit those acts. And dealing with the drug council recently, we were talking about the increase in the use of drugs by individuals to help boost themselves to be involved in criminal activities. So the question is being asked, how they are so brazen, how they are so brave. We need to take all these variables in consideration when we are dealing with this situation. But the issue is the removal of guns from the streets in Trinidad and Tobago, preventing these guns from coming into Trinidad and Tobago, and ensuring that some of the problems that we are having only relate to illegal guns and not legal. All that work needs to be done in order for us to arrest and deal with the problem that is existing in Trinidad and Tobago. In conclusion, I wish to thank my officers. They have passed through some difficult years. From COVID-19, which is still with us, so to this crime surge. They have held on to the wheel. In spite of our decision to restrict leave, to call out persons, to change the way they work, they demonstrate that understanding and appreciation. And they come out there with all commitment and devotion to duty. I ask my officers to continue doing this work, because the work that they're doing is for all of us, and it's for Trinidad and Tobago. Again, I want to give the population the assurance that we, the police here, are here for you. And we'll do all that is necessary within the laws of Trinidad and Tobago to make Trinidad and Tobago safe. I will now pass on to my colleague, great supporter, Mr. Wendell Williams, who is in charge of Intelligence and Investigation, Deputy Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everybody. I really would like to add my voice to thanking the hard-working police officers who have been carrying the burden in so many ways of law enforcement and touching on COVID, doing things that we were really not accustomed to. It's not an understatement to take some time to acknowledge that, because it's been a sustained period of demand on our officers. That being said, the issue concerning gangs, from 2018 to present, we've charged 90 persons for gang-related offenses. While this may not be a very big number, I chose to quote it because in some quarters, persons believe that we are not doing anything with what we've been empowered to do. And so it's important to recognize that there is action based on what we have been given in terms of tools, and the fact that the process for dealing with gangs is not a simple one. Mr. Jacob alluded to the fact that we didn't get here overnight and that there's an all-of community, all of Trinidad and Tobago need for everyone to put their hand in what we are required to deal with. So, just to touch on, without going too heavily into one or two things, The fact is that we have gone about developing our capacity to deal with gangs. To do so, it requires training, equipment, structure, touching everything. As we've seen, we've gone digitized for a lot of things across Trinidad and Tobago, and that as well is part of it. So that is in motion. We've started, I don't know if I ever mentioned, it's been a while I've been out at a media conference, but we've started a pilot project in one of the divisions for the purpose of developing certain standards for dealing with gangs. And so that is very much in train, and the benefits of that have been spreading to other divisions to aid their capacity. The process has brought us to a place where we've developed certain documents which would allow us to do an order that gives structured direction to our people. I know you are not too and overly concerned about the behind-the-scenes activities, but you ought to be, because these are the things that in due course will empower us to be able even more effectively to deal with the gang scourge that we have. And so Mr. Jacob spoke about the GRACE program. We work towards identifying, just like with the youth clubs and so, areas that communities can contribute to getting their communities back in order. And so that when we come in, even if we come into a community that is under gang control with a hard approach, we're not leaving that community exposed thereafter for gangs to roll over again. And so it's the kind of strategic type of work that we have to do, that when we come in with the hard approach, the social services need to be there to support the flow of things so that we can hold down the gains that were obtained. So while we may be looking slow, we're building consistently. We won some favor off of the enterprise project in the past, where several persons of influence became impressed by the kind of impact that J.C. Small, Corporal J.C. Small, and others down in the central were able to have in enterprise. But then we started to lose ground. And so it's just to say that the sustainability is one of the key things, and we are building in a way that we understand it will be sustainable. The other part of it, Mr. Jacob just touched on it lightly. It's important to reiterate that what we do, we must do it lawfully. We can't do anything that is ultra-virus and expect it to be sustainable. And so we are grappling with, like anywhere else in the world, where police actions are under so much scrutiny. We have to find ways to keep our officers motivated, to get them in the mode that they will not be intimidated in any way, to legitimately challenge and deal with hard criminals. And in such a way, the strategy and pointing them in directions is very critical to what we have to do. So I spoke about the draft departmental order that is in train, and we've had some policy going along. The police service has had a heavy trust in terms of developing policy on different issues, and that's one of them. Not digressing much, but I hope you could appreciate where this comes in. Tomorrow, if all goes to plan, several sergeants, 260-something, will be promoted, persons will be promoted to the rank of sergeant. One of the things that we have to do is to make sure that what we strategize at our level, that it gets down to the supervisors, and that the supervisors are motivated and empowered basically to carry out what they need to do. And so you're looking forward to this promotion, because it's been a long time. Mr. Jacob, maybe you could tell me how many years? Since 2016 that we haven't had a promotion of this magnitude to sergeants. And then you could appreciate what that means for persons and their families and their motivation when coming out to work. So we don't look at this as being separate and apart from our initiatives. We look at this as being totally strategic, and we really need to commend Commissioner and all who had a stake even sacrifice with regards to getting us to this stage where we can have this promotion. Over the years, we've had a lot of obstacles to make these promotions happen. And so we are trusting quite a bit of hope in these moves, and after this, we'll be moving to do the necessary to promote constables to corporals. Well, since we started doing our strategic plan, our new 3-year strategic plan, in doing that, we've been stressing the focus on priority offenders, priority organizations, priority approach in terms of how we do things. And really, because police is so much in demand, I don't think we have any other way to approach getting the most out of what we are required to do. And so I just want the public to know that we are approaching their welfare in that regard. There have been times within recent times that we have targeted individuals who we found were making the most havoc. And sometimes, I don't know, some winds blow and things go in a direction that in some unplanned ways, things assist us. But there have been deliberate actions that have been taken. So despite what we're seeing now as a rate of violence, the rate could have been worse had it not been for several interventions that we have done based on information we've received and persons we've targeted and understood what was going to be taking place, and literally interrupted more bloodshed and loss of life. We know that fleeing offenders, and is a part of the bigger requirement of TTPS, they are dangerous, tend to be. In terms of enforcing, you have that much greater risk, and so we are as well in the transition of dealing with that heavier scrutiny of policing that exists, as I said, not just Trinidad, it's all around the world, as well as heavy armed criminals, which is really another aspect that is quite critical, that requires us to make sure we fortify sufficiently mind and even with strategy to deal with what we're facing. One of the things I recommend to Mr. Jacob quite recently is that we focus on, in the short term, persons moving around in tinted vehicles. We have some challenges with the law as it is, in terms of what was the old thing is repealed, and what is new now is not quite in place in terms of the instrument that's required to measure tint and so on. We are quite aware of that. However, we, with the state of events now, are quite in order to pay attention to tinted vehicles and in certain circumstances to regard them as suspect. And so, forgive us if you find us paying greater attention to tinted vehicles, especially vehicles that we end up seeing, as we see on CCTV and so on, where people coming out with high-powered rifles, moving in tactical form, sometimes looking better than the police, and wounding, killing people. So that's a clear intention, because we have to find ways to limit the kind of movements that people are having. And we are looking for any other way to support that kind of initiative that we may be even more empowered to prevent and to stop the fear madness of heavy tinted vehicles comfortable on the roads in Trinidad and Tobago. Right, there are some other things that we have been talking about. Some of those things are really what I feel we need to just hold closely to our chest so that we can have the opportunity to roll these things out and to see the benefits of them before we even go pronouncing on them. In some cases, we find we come out and we speak to the public, and our police is the first time they're hearing. And not because we didn't share it at higher quarters, but sometimes we just didn't make sure that it got to them. And we think that we really want to give that kind of, as we did with the rolling out of the strategic plan, we went to all the divisions of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and we engaged persons, our staff, directly, so that they could have a clear appreciation of what we are for. Right? People rising up on any given day You know, you're on the job. Policing requires discretion. Regardless of how you put regulations in, police officers exercise their discretion, and the administration books in policing speak clearly to that, the good ones, that you can't over-regulate police. And so we are dependent on really getting our police in a way that they feel confident, that they know what they're about, they understand that they are valued and appreciated, that we treat them as human beings, and that we expect of them to carry out the functions out there that we can't dictate like puppets to tell them what to do. Okay? Let's see if I have anything. I would want to pause for the while. Mr. Jacob did mention, let me just mention as well, the partnership with the ATF, and there are other entities that do reach out, and we do reach out to, that are assisting. The issue of ghost gangs is a challenge because they don't come with the markings as you ought to be able to trace it easily. And so we're looking for ways in which we can empower ourselves to identify common entities in any movement of firearms and ammunition.